Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our planning board meeting dated Tuesday, March the 5th. We'll call the meeting to order. Do we have any declarations of conflicts today? Seeing none, can I have an approval of the agenda? Moved by Bobby, seconded by Jackie. All those in favor? Great. Adoption of the minutes from February 21st. Moved by Sin, seconded by Councillor McCabe. All those in favor? Wonderful. Any business arising from the minutes? Okay, seeing none, we can move right on to our first report. We actually have two this evening. This is for 15 Park Street, and our manager of development planning, David Gundam, is online, so he will be presenting this request for reconsideration under section 3.15 of the zoning and development bylaw. So over to you, David.
Okay, thank you, Mary Yankoff, and my apologies for not being there this evening. I took ill today, so I'm just fielding this one from home. I'm going to share a screen to the presentation that I've prepared, and I'll just put that up here momentarily. Can everyone see that okay? Okay, so as the chair mentioned, this is an application for reconsideration under section 3.15 of the zoning and development bylaw. This reconsideration request concerns a major variance that was approved for 15 Park Street on January 22nd, 2024. It was a major variance for temporary use, 1-year temporary use to permit the Community Outreach Center, currently located at 241 Euston Street, to be relocated to 15 Park Street for a period of up to 1 year from the date of issuance of an occupancy permit within the southwest portion of the property. The Outreach Center on the new site would constitute 2 combined modular trailer units, each having a dimension of approximately 60 feet by 149 or 150 feet. On February 8th of 2024, the Planning Department received a request for reconsideration of this decision by Council under Section 3.15 of the Zoning and Development Bylaw. So Section 3.15.1 states that if a permit or other approval under the bylaw is granted, not granted, or granted subject to conditions, which would be the case in this major variance, and an aggrieved person feels that the decision is unjustified or unwarranted under the bylaw, then the aggrieved person may seek reconsideration by council concerning the original decision. Also under section 3.15, the aggrieved person must submit their request within 21 calendar days of the original decision of council, which the aggrieved person certainly did in this case. And also the section 3.15 under subsection 3 prescribes threshold tests that must be met for council to consider rescinding, changing, or varying a decision. So these include the threshold tests are: 1, if new material, facts, or evidence not available at the time of the decision are subsequently made known; material change of circumstance has occurred since the original decision; and the last test is whether there is clear doubt concerning the correctness of the decision in the first instance or in the first case. So the rationale that the aggrieved person, who is a local resident, provided to the city concerning the major variance approval was: 1, not enough consideration was given to the objections that were raised by area residents; 2, negative impact on property values already occurring; 3, lack of notification due to the way that the bylaw is written; and 4, failure of police and city to protect citizens and property at previous location being 241 Euston Street. The new location will be no different. So just to go point by point, and this is echoed in our report to the board tonight, just to evaluate each of the stated rationale that the resident provided for the reconsideration. So the first point, that not enough consideration was given to the objections raised by area residents. It's noted that notice was sent in the mail to affected property owners within 100 meters of the subject property as per section 393B of the zoning bylaw. A total of 20 letters of opposition and 2 neutral letters, and no letters of support were received in response to this circulation, and that's the total number of letters received prior to the recommendation that was made to planning board originally and thereafter that meeting. The zoning bylaw also says that after 14 calendar days from the date of the mailed notice that the major variance is to be referred to planning board to issue a recommendation to council on the basis of staff opinion and public response. On January 16th, 2024, the planning board voted 5-4 in favor of recommendation to approve the major variance to council, and subsequently on January 22nd, 2024, council voted 6-5 in favor to approve the major variant request, with the mayor casting the tie-breaking vote. Based on the process that was followed, planning staff are of the opinion that it cannot be conclusively stated that there is clear doubt as to the correctness of the decision based on a matter of process in this case, and that residents were afforded proper opportunity under the processes of the zoning and development bylaw to raise and voice their concerns. The second point that the resident raised was negative impact on property values. I'd like to note for the board that potential impact on property values for land use decisions made under the zoning and development bylaw as well as the official plan is not an aspect that professional planners are permitted to account for in their review of land use proposals. Speculative impact on property values does not concern general principles of land use compatibility and appropriateness of land use for a particular site that form the fundamental pillars of professional planning review. The planning board and council, city council are also narrowly tasked with determining whether a decision upholds the intent and purpose, a land use decision upholds the intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw, and therefore negative impacts on property values cannot factor into determining whether there is clear doubt as to the correctness of the decision, as it is not something that we factor in our review, nor do planning board and council factor it into their decision-making process. The third point of justification for the reconsideration that the resident provided was lack of notification due to the way that the zoning and development bylaw is written. Required notification under the bylaw was provided to residents as it concerns major variances. Additional notification beyond what the bylaw prescribes would cause city staff to exceed their legal authority under the bylaw. There is therefore no doubt as to the correctness of the decision from the perspective of legally required notification as per the requirements of the zoning and development bylaw in this case. A proper process was followed in this instance. And lastly, the last point that the resident provided for the reconsideration in support of the reconsideration was failure of, that should read failure of police and city to protect citizens and property at previous location being 241 Euston Street. The new location will be no different. And echoing from what's contained in our report to the board tonight, the level of protective police service related to the existing location of the Community Outreach Center at 241 Euston Street does not concern clear doubt as to the correctness of the order or decision to approve the major variance from a land use perspective for the new location at 15 Park Street. So to conclude, our recommendation this evening to the Planning Board, the Planning and Heritage Department encourages Planning Board to recommend to Council to deny the reconsideration request concerning the January 22nd, 2024 approval of the major variance for 15 Park Street, PID number 365593, as it has not been found that the request meets the related threshold tests as prescribed by section 3.15.3 of the Zoning and Development Bylaw for a reconsideration request that concerns a decision of council. Thank you, members of the board, and I'll stop sharing screen and turn it over to the chair and members for questions at this point. Thank you.
Thank you for that report, David. So, folks, this is not something we see very often. So if anyone has any questions around process or anything that we can help to clarify, because this is not, a reconsideration is not something you would see on a regular basis here at Planning Board. So if anyone needs any clarification around that, we can offer that information, as well as anything around this particular application and reconsideration itself. So open it up to you folks for any questions. I'm sure you all remember this application, so this is, so anyways, if anyone has any questions, go ahead.
I'm just wondering should we decide to uphold the decision or the recommendation of council, what are the next possible steps if the applicant or the appellant or whatever terminology we use is not in agreement with the decision? Is there any other avenues open, or is this the end of it, or what does that look like?
So I'll take a stab at this, and then I'll let David weigh in. So the applicant or the appellant had two options. They could have applied through a reconsideration, or they could have appealed through IRAC. So they chose to go through a reconsideration. So the time would have lapsed now to apply for an appeal. David, is there anything else you can add to that?
Through the chair, I think you covered it all. I'll just mention that no IRAC appeal was ever filed, and the appeal period has long since lapsed. Basically, right now, we're recommending that the reconsideration be recommended to council to deny, so that if the board votes in favor of that motion, that'll be forwarded to council at their next meeting on March 12th. It's up to council then whether they want to turn down the reconsideration request. If they do, that's where it stops, and there'd be no further ability for anyone to try and appeal or try and make a request to pull back council's decision.
Thank you for that, David. And so just to clarify, the decision being made tonight by Planning Board is to accept staff's recommendation or not on the reconsideration. And the staff recommendation is that it has not met the threshold to meet a reconsideration. So that's the decision that we need to make tonight, whether or not we accept staff's recommendation that reconsideration, the threshold has not been met. So this is not about, this is not necessarily about the project itself, or the application. This is about whether it meets the threshold for a reconsideration. So I just wanted to make sure we all understood what we were deciding tonight. So, anyone else have any questions? No questions.
More comment.
Okay, go ahead.
And I would say, a lot of work went into this file to ensure that the process was properly followed initially. We knew it was going to be one of those applications that you wanted to ensure that things were done properly. So I'm fairly confident that staff did their part. And although I didn't support the initial application, I'm not going to be able to support a reconsideration based on those 3 points in the threshold. I do think that staff did their due diligence with the information that was provided to us.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe. Go ahead, Lee.
I'm just wondering if anything changed since we approved it last time?
No, and as outlined in the thresholds, there are, that's one of the thresholds that would need to be met was, is there new information that was not brought forward at the time?
Right.
And there wasn't, so that was outlined that there is no new information according to the report from staff.
Okay.
Anybody else? Oh, go ahead, Sin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. David, did you get any opinion from the city solicitor to see if there is any legal ground for reconsideration?
Through the chair, Sam, that's a good question. We did consult with our solicitors a couple of times prior to tonight, and they were of the opinion, the three tests that I outlined, the three thresholds, the first two, when we consulted with legal counsel, they had they were of the opinion that there wasn't anything that would trigger the first two tests, that there's been no new material facts or change of circumstances that have occurred. The only test that they raised potential concern about was whether there was clear doubt as to the correctness of the order. And based on our analysis, we didn't come to a conclusion that the original order was incorrect based on proper process being followed and all of the information that council would need to make an informed decision being put before them, with staff, of course, evaluating the information that was submitted to the city.
Great, thanks, David.
Thanks for that question. Any other questions? And if we don't, then we do have the Planning and Heritage Department recommends to Planning Board to recommend to Council to deny the reconsideration request concerning the January 22nd approval of the major variance for 15 Park Street. So that's the recommendation of the staff. So do I have a resolution that's, go ahead, Sin? Okay, moved by Sin that we accept staff's recommendation to deny the reconsideration, and seconded by Lee McDonald. So the question is now out there, the resolution is there. Is there any questions on the resolution? Okay, if not, then all those in favor? Okay, anybody opposed? Okay, so that's unanimous that the Planning and Heritage Board has accepted staff's recommendation to not reconsider this application. So that will move on to council next week, and council will then make a decision from there. So thank you very much for that. We can now move on to our second item on the agenda. And Brandon, our planner one, is here to present this, and it's 101 Longworth Avenue, and it's a request for a major variance, temporary use to permit an outdoor patio in one required parking space. So go ahead, Brandon.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just before Brandon begins, can I go back to the minutes just for a second? I just had a question that I had a note down here. I didn't see it earlier. Under the January 16th meeting, with regards to the environmental assessment that has been discussed here before, although this does not directly impact this property, you did say that it was going to be completed and reviewed by the end of January. Have we received any status update on that?
David, are you okay to answer that question?
Yes, Madam Chair. So through the Chair, Councillor Beck, I'm not aware that we've received an update. However, I do know that Public Works was also in touch with the province on this one, so I can check back with them after our meeting tonight and provide an update from there. I'm just not aware of any news at this point.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. Over to you, Brandon.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a pretty quick one. So here we're looking for a major variance for a temporary structure at 101 Longworth Avenue. The PID is 363671. The property is located along Longworth Avenue. It runs parallel to the Confederation Trail. Surrounding uses include low-density residential, commercial, industrial, and open space. So the request here is to permit a temporary structure, so it's two outdoor patios for the 2024 summer season. These patios will occupy one required parking space and one required loading space, and they have dimensions of 12 by 14 feet and 11 by 14 feet, and will be utilized as seating for customers. And here we have a diagram of what the patios look like in relation to the building. So some history on this. Temporary structure variance has been granted the last 3 years by council, and during this time in the notification period, no letters were received from nearby property owners. So In conclusion, the Planning and Heritage Department encourages Planning Board to recommend to City Council to approve the request for a temporary structure variance for an outdoor patio to occupy one required parking space and one required loading space at 101 Longworth Avenue until October 31st, 2024. And this approval will be subject to the Planning and Heritage Department issuing a development permit. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Just as a housekeeping question, was there not some discussion here last year? I mean, this is the fourth year in a row that these folks are coming in and applying for the exact same thing. Was there not some talk about direction to staff to take a look at this housekeeping application type of a thing so that somebody doesn't need to apply for the same thing year after year after year in their own private property? I mean, I know the space, I mean, there's a ton of parking there. And did we recommend that go back for, or not? Like, I don't know, do you know that, Brandon?
I presented these last year too, and multiple people asked about that. I know this all began because of COVID, because I don't think there was a bylaw in place to have an outdoor structure that would only be there a couple months of the year. But I know Donna, our manager of policy, is working to develop a bylaw. From what I've heard, it's supposed to be done in the next month or two. And once that's finished, we would prorate the people that have already gone through the major variance process, so they will get some of their money back. So.
Okay, great, thank you for that. Any questions? Go ahead, Sin.
You know, most of these applications are, you know, we're a seasonal economy, and tourism is, you know, that's people at restaurants would have patios and all. Maybe see if we can have as of right in certain aspects and define the rules and regulations around it, instead of coming in to the planning board or the city council again and again, because these applications are really, we don't see a lot of objection to those sort of developments, and it doesn't make sense for the city to have added bureaucracy here. So just, you know, see if there can be a major policy change around that area.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, I had the same question as you, Madam Chair, and I do distinctly remember last year that we were kind of caught in a bit of a box because we had some COVID patios and non-COVID patios, and we didn't know who was a COVID patio and who was a non-COVID patio. And I guess really at the end of the day, tagging on to what Sen was saying too, businesses have to have an element of predictability and understanding that if things don't change largely from one year to the next, let's get on with business and let's allow that to happen. And, you know, we're trying to remove barriers as much as we can. We're trying to do that with our changes in our e-permitting, for example, when it comes to developments. So we're trying to move things along. I think this is something that we should be moving along too. I don't think there should be a whole lot of time spent on approving something that ultimately we're going to, as long as it's built correctly, because we did have some, and that was another point I might want to add, is that in doing this, we did have some questions about patios not being built. They might have been, should have been on an angular, but they were built square. So they were ending up taking up more parking spots, and they ended up in problems. So there are some things to be worked out on that in terms of
Yeah,
not just necessarily green lighting everything, but ensuring that they are built as per, and I know that we had some discussions with Todd Sutcliffe, I think, was involved in that last year as well, too, because he's the guy who oversees a lot of this stuff to make sure that they are conforming, so.
so what we have is, we have 3 different areas to which patios fall under.
Yeah.
2 of them are protective services, one of them are the COVID on the city right-of-way, and then there's a non-COVID on the city right-of-way, which are the parking lot ones. And then there's the COVID patios on private property, which fall under this department. So it's very convoluted, and you're
Right.
right. And so it's the idea of getting out of these silos and putting them all in one place, and they're still not in one place. So we're still kind of in that kind of situation. So to Councillor Beck's to confirm what he was saying, he's right. There's all kinds of things happening with these patios in different departments that still haven't been completed, and we're getting really close to that summer season again. As he said, parking, some patios that were built incorrectly, and so they're taking up too many parking places. So to his point, we do need to streamline this process sooner as opposed to later. Yes,
And
Councilor?
I do know Downtown Charlottetown, Inc. was involved in some of those discussions as well, too, because there were some concerns that they had. So, we'd have to make sure that they're brought in on the table, too, in those discussions to make sure that, we're kind of hearing all those important voices around this table. So hopefully in March 2025, we're not having the same discussion again.
Yeah, because the other important piece of that was to ensure that we applied the accessibility lens to all of these decisions that we make when it comes to outdoor patios, to ensure that they are available to everybody. So, anywho, here we are today. Staff is recommending to Planning Board to recommend to Council to approve the request for this temporary structure, again, for year number 4. So, okay, moved by Chris, seconded by Jackie. So the resolution is out there. Any discussion on the resolution? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? Oh, okay, that's great. Thank you for that. Any new business? Oh, I'll have a motion to adjourn. Great, all right. Enjoy your evening, folks.